Hello again from Metro Manila, the Philippines, Southeastern Asia. Here's my brief summary of news items found on the Independent newspaper's website. It is a British newspaper. As always, I declare at the outset of this news video that I do not intend to infringe on any copyrights. Currently, the British Prime Minister Theresa May is under a serious pressure either to resign or then nominally to resign and yet to stand for a re-election. In other words, to call a leadership review vote in her caucus or parliamentary group, or then possibly call early general elections. The problem is that there are already several cabinet ministers who have resigned on the recent days because they oppose Prime Minister May's deal with the European Union on the terms of the Brexit or British exit from the European Union by the end of 2020. She defends her deal despite the cabinet exodus, as the European Union insists that Britain can remain. The latest ministers to resign from Prime Minister May's cabinet are Esther McVey and Dominic Raab. The British pound drops sharply after cabinet resignations. Brexit deal is the best we can do given May's red lines, or the best we can do. Given May's red lines, EU says. All you need to know about May's potential no confidence vote. The last time that a British Prime Minister lost an official vote of confidence in Parliament, that is more specifically in the House of Commons, which is the directly elected lower and by far the more powerful of the two houses of the British Parliament, was in 1979, when the British Prime Minister James Callaghan led a minority Labour government, and the wave of strikes that had struck Britain between November 1978 and February 1979, the so-called Winter of Discontent, was the main reason why, by a very tiny one-vote majority, the non-confidence motion introduced by the official opposition, meaning the Conservatives, then led by Margaret Thatcher, carried or won. Of course, there were some other issues, such as the failure of the two devolution or decentralization referendums in Wales and Scotland, and a growing sense of disillusionment with the Labour Party because it seemed, while claiming to represent the British working class, to be increasingly unable to manage the government. Columnist Mark Steele has written a column entitled "How Do We Know May's Brexit Plan is Fair? Everyone Hates It." And the last time a British Prime Minister was forced to resign because of a leadership challenge, or chose to resign because of it, happened in November 1990, when the first British female Prime Minister, Margaret Thatcher, who incidentally, just like the current incumbent Prime Minister Theresa May, was a Conservative, faced a caucus revolt over various issues such as her authoritarian leadership style, her skeptical approach to the European Economic Community, as the organization was then known, and especially its plans to federalize or to further centralize the European Economic Community, and a growing sense of disillusionment with her, and the desire on the part of a growing number of fellow conservatives to find a sufficiently centrist and moderate and so-called one nation conservative to ensure that the party would stay in power longer. While technically the late Prime Minister Thatcher did not lose the leadership vote, in fact she won the first round of ballots with 204 votes compared to 152 votes garnered by her opponent, former cabinet minister Michael Heseltine. And then there were 16 Conservative parliamentarians who either abstained or spoiled their ballots or were absent. However, according to the arcane rules for leadership review votes by the British Conservative Party, a 57.5% majority of all British Conservative members of the House of Commons was required for outright election on the first ballot. And since Prime Minister Thatcher fell 4 precious votes short of that figure, a second vote was scheduled to be held. At first, Prime Minister Thatcher declared that she would stand on the second ballot. However, she decided to discuss the issue with her cabinet ministers individually, and most of them let it be known, although most did not say so directly to her face, but by using polite diplomatic language, let it be known that they doubted that she could win the second ballot. The first cabinet minister to discuss the issue with her, Kenneth Clarke, bluntly told her that she would be clearly defeated should she stand on the second ballot. And therefore, when Prime Minister Thatcher saw her support among even her cabinet colleagues deteriorating, although most of them assured her that should she stand on the second ballot, they would still support her. One of them, Malcolm Rifkind, said that he was unsure whether he would support her on the second ballot. She decided then, in the interests of the party unity and possibly her reputation, legacy, and of the country, and since she did have at the time a man whom she preferred privately to be her successor, a Chancellor of the Exchequer or Finance Minister John Major, she decided then to resign. I wonder what Prime Minister Theresa May will do. Should she call a general election, as the British parliamentary elections are called, it would already be the third general election after 2010. The previous ones, 2015 and 2017, the first one did yield a narrow conservative majority. The second one yielded a plurality, and the British Conservative cabinet has depended on the small but vocal Democratic Unionist Party of Northern Ireland for support on questions of the budget and confidence. But we will go on. After today's cabinet resignations, here's what will happen next by John Rentoul. Brexit poll shows voters back new referendum as Remain takes big lead. Minister claims 80% of public support May's deal before apologizing for making up statistic. What is the Brexit deal? Theresa May's agreement with the EU explained. Saudi clears Crown Prince of blame over journalist's murder and seeks death penalty for suspects. White House aide sacked after extraordinary Melania Trump outburst. After Myra Ricardo, will Melania Trump set her sights on John Kelly? Voters wear disguises to cast multiple ballots, Trump claims, again with no evidence for the Democratic victories in the recent midterm elections. After all, President Trump should know that such disguises are very difficult to use in such advanced modern democracies as the United States. If necessary, the election officials have the right, I assume, to force the would-be voters to provide their fingerprints. Those cannot be disguised. And of course, if those suspicious-seeming voters refuse, the election officials can have the right to refuse to hand them the ballot papers, or at least they can invalidate their votes. Again, President Trump evades responsibility. His divisive and often harsh rhetoric surely has, to a large extent, divided the United States, and it's no wonder that enough of those American voters who bothered to vote wanted to weaken President Trump by voting for Democratic candidates to the U.S. House of Representatives. Okay. Europe. Denmark withholds 7.5 million British pounds Tanzania aid over unacceptable homophobia. Peer who promised woman lord seat in return for sex escapes ban. California communities begin recovery as massive wildfires continue to rage. The Crimes of Grindelwald, an astonishing level of visual detail and inventiveness. Europe, Iceland president went too far after calling for pineapple pizza ban.